We are excited and motivated by all of the interest that we received for this webinar, and we hope that we're able to provide you with helpful information as well as guide you through the process of becoming a court interpreter. Again, we welcome everyone to the webinar, Becoming a Court Interpreter. So exciting. My name is Angela De Leon. I am the supervising analyst for the Court Interpreters Program at the Judicial Council of California. And I am joined today by two amazing credentialed interpreters who are going to introduce themselves and share one thing that they hope you take away from this 45-minute webinar. Jennifer?
Everyone.
Oh,
My name
Tyler.
is Hi everyone. My name is Tyler Nguyen, and good afternoon from Sacramento, capital of California. So I have been a Vietnamese court interpreter full-time for Sacramento County Superior Court for almost 12 years. And in total, I've been an interpreter for about 14 years. And I also, beside the court work, I also work for the federal court and doing some work for the federal government, specifically the State Department. And today you're going to be getting a lot of useful information like you just heard. And hopefully when you log off this webinar, I hope that you're going to know the one concrete first step that you're going to need to take to get your career started. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, my colleague.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer De La Cruz, and I come to you from San Bernardino, California. My career as an interpreter started about 28 years ago at a hospital. I was there for about 9 years as a medical interpreter. And since 2006, I've been court certified for Spanish. And I spent about 9 years as a staff interpreter for Riverside Superior Court. And for a little over 10 years, I've been here at the San Bernardino Superior Court as the manager of its interpreter program. And I'll tell you, I've had the pleasure of mentoring and teaching future court interpreters throughout my career. And it's been such a pleasure to do this interesting work, especially getting the opportunity to work on state and national language access projects and organizations. Here's another takeaway that I foresee from today's webinar. I think you're going to leave inspired. I think you're going to walk away knowing that this is a noble and valuable profession that is within your reach and that it's worthy of your efforts no matter where you're starting. All right, and I'll turn it to Tyler.
So what is the court interpreter profession? Every person in the US has the constitutional right to due process of law. A critical part of this due process is the ability to understand what goes on in court proceedings. Now, this is where the interpreters come in. We ensure the court users' constitutional right to due process by helping them understand and meaningfully participate in court proceedings. Now, it is one of the most cognitively demanding skills, unlike the myth that, whoever who can speak two languages can be an interpreter. Interpreters are officers of the court, and we take an oath to faithfully translate everything being said in court. And because of that, judges, attorneys, and a jury will rely on our interpretation in court to render their judgments, make arguments, and come up with a verdict prospectively. Jennifer?
Well said, Tyler. And I would add that this career is in high demand throughout the state. California has 58 counties, and we've got a map here. You can see lots of counties in California, and there are more than 200 languages spoken throughout the state. There are job vacancies, especially for the most dominant languages like Spanish. And you may start in one court as a court interpreter and end up in another like I did. Language access needs vary throughout the state and even the nation. So it really depends on where the need is. That may be where you end up as a court interpreter. Some interpreters are hired with a court and remain there for their entire career, while others may start in one place and then life takes them to another county where they get hired on as staff. And if that's what happens with you, sure, it might take a little bit to acclimate to the new environment. But the great thing is that the skills of a court interpreter transfer very nicely, and your credential is valid throughout California. And just as any county or state could need your expertise, So could any litigation or proceeding type, from something as simple as an infraction, like a traffic ticket, to something as substantial as a capital case. Court interpreters assist, like Tyler said, parties, defendants, witnesses, even the parents in a juvenile court, or even judges when they're having to communicate between countries. It's anyone who needs to come before the court to be heard, or who the court needs to hear from them. If there's a language barrier, court interpreters are there to assist. And I would say one thing that makes court interpreting so interesting is the variety. And it's not uncommon for something that starts out very straightforward to turn very complicated. And court interpreters are prepared for anything and everything. And in my experience, no 2 days are alike. Even after all these years, for me, court is still fascinating each and every day. And I'll turn it
I
to
can
Tyler.
second that.
Thank you.
So you might be wondering, what are the skills you will need for court interpreting? Now, the first and most important is the linguistic skill. You must be fluent in both your interpreting language and the English language. Now, remember, like when you interpret in court, people will listen to your English rendition of whatever the non-English speaker is saying. So your English has to be intelligible. I cannot stress that enough. And you can find free self-assessment resources on the California Judicial Council Language Access website. Now, at the minimum, you would have to have the ability to listen to the message and understand the substance of the message before you can interpret. You have to speak using proper grammar and accurate vocabulary. It has to be legal vocabulary, which you will come to learn that it might be very different from what we use on a day-to-day. Living in the US, we often interject English words and terms in our conversation in a target language, let's say in Vietnamese. I would practice your language integrity by sticking to just one language while you're conversing with your friends and family, just to get yourself acclimated to using just that one language when you interpret in court. Your language pair is like two separate islands, right? And your job as an interpreter is to build a solid bridge between those two islands and connect those two islands. Jennifer?
All right, and I will review the last 3 skills on this screen: reading, interpreting, and behavioral skills, but we're also going to call those ethics. So for reading skills, lots of future interpreters grew up bilingual. They spoke one language at home and maybe another for school, right? If that sounds like you, you are not alone. One thing that you will need for your success is the ability to read well in, I'll say in this case, both of your working languages, but you might have multiple working languages, right? Court interpreters are often called upon to read English language documents. In fact, it's very common to the limited English proficient individual that they're assisting. But they may also be asked to read something written in the non-English language. So if you've already got those reading skills in your working languages, great. But if not, that is okay, and it is not uncommon to need to work on those skills. You will need those skills in order to be successful both at the testing phase of this journey and during your career itself. For interpreting skills, so I would say being bilingual is a great start, but the skill of interpreting the words that other people are speaking and doing it accurately and using the same language level, that's a skill that you will need to practice. And I can't say practice enough in this webinar. You have to practice it to get good at it. I like to describe it as building a new neural pathway, right? It's literally a different way of thinking when you're interpreting, because interpreters need to be able to hear something or read something and almost instantaneously think about how to say it in the other languages. No delay, right? Then they have to say it. And they have to do all of this without missing the next thing that's being said or the next piece of what they're reading. So it is a skill that has to be practiced. Touching on behavioral skills, I'll say again, ethics is part of this. Professionalism and a fierce, ardent commitment to ethics, so critical for court interpreters to have in their toolbox. This profession is not for those who cut corners irresponsibly or who aren't self-aware. Why? Because, as Tyler said earlier, acting unprofessionally or breaking interpreter ethics can change the outcome of the message, right? It can make a difference for a verdict, for the credibility of a witness. It makes a difference in people's lives. Judges and juries count on the court interpreter to be spot on when they're analyzing the credibility of the witness that the interpreter is interpreting for, right? So I would say the behavioral piece is kind of this combination of professionalism and ethics, and they are absolutely vital for access to justice for all of those who the interpreter is serving. And that wraps up this slide.
So the next step is, how do you get credentialed in California? Now, the 3 steps that you see on the screen: study, pass, and enroll. Now, what does that mean? So this is a highly skilled profession that requires strong dedication, practice, self-sufficiency, and persistency. Now, some candidates can accomplish this in 1 year, and for others, it may take longer and multiple attempts to pass the exam. For me specifically, it took me 3 tries to pass the oral exam, which is the most challenging part of the certification process. And I accomplished that by forming a study group, studied and record myself, review, critique my interpretation, and constantly improve upon the mistakes that I made previously. Jennifer?
Yeah, I would add to that, it's different for everyone, right? So as people are looking to think about what it might take for them, is it going to take a year? Is it going to take 2 years? Is it going to take 1 try or 4 tries? One of the wonderful things you'll find is that there's great resources on the Judicial Council Language Access Services website that help you analyze where you are now. And remember, I said, wherever you are now, you can get there. For me, I was already an interpreter in the medical field. And so my path was a little different than others that might be starting off fresh, seeing perhaps this information for the first time. All right, and I think we're turning it to Angela.
Yes, thank you. So aspiring interpreters of any language must take the court interpreter written exam. This exam covers grammar, idioms, and ethical knowledge. The exam is given completely in English. In California, you'll see that the languages are split up into 2 groups. In the green box, you'll see the certified languages. And in the blue box are all the other languages, which are registered languages. The only difference between both boxes is just the required exams. People looking to become certified in a certified language, they must take the bilingual interpreting exam after they've passed the written exam, while those seeking registered status for all the other languages can take the written and the oral proficiency exam in any order. Tyler?
So what are your required exams? Now, on the screen, you will see 2 QR codes that you can scan with your mobile device. Now, both QR codes will take you to our dedicated web pages for each exam path. There you will find details on the required exams you will need, how much each exam costs, and what resources you can use to prepare. If you don't have your device available, this webinar is being recorded and will be available online for you later on. And I can speak from personal experience that this is where I started to get my study materials, and they are of tremendous use, I guarantee you. So I really encourage you give it a try. Jennifer?
I second that. I would say definitely use the resources that are on that site. All right, so what should candidates be studying? So the first recommendation that we are going to offer is visit your local courthouse, right? It's an excellent start. It is really vital that candidates that are interested in this wonderful career observe court interpreting and get familiar with the court system, at least to some level. You can use the QR code that's listed there to find your local courthouse. You could maybe you know where your local courthouse is, right? Court proceedings are typically open to the public. Not all court proceedings, but they are typically open to the public. And getting a chance to observe the proceedings can make all the difference in your learning journey. Yes, you'll need to study other ways. Absolutely. But there's nothing like seeing the real thing. You'll get to see how things flow in the courtroom, what that communication's like in a real environment. And you'll probably get to see things you haven't even seen on your favorite legal TV shows and movies that maybe interested you in the profession in the first place. If you're able to observe an interpreter, even better, because there are so many aspiring interpreters that end up getting a huge boost of confidence by watching an interpreter. It's that aha moment where someone says, wow, I can do that when you see an interpreter. I know that's how I got interested in interpreting so many years ago. I was working in a medical office and I met an interpreter and I saw what she was doing, and it was that aha moment for me, and I never turned back. I said, that's what I want to do. I can do that. So when an aspiring interpreter contacts me and my team here at the San Bernardino Court, we are more than happy to provide guidance on how to make the most of your day at the local courthouse. So I can't say enough about encouraging you to contact your local courthouse, find the folks there that are in charge of interpreter services, whatever that might look like, and ask, do you have a suggestion on how I can make the most out of visiting the court? Tyler?
And just to second that, you will find that most court staff will be very friendly and helpful to your needs, especially if you're an interpreter looking to become certified. So for the next step, to study and practice, what are the parts in the oral exam that you have to pass? Now, there are 3 parts: sight translation, consecutive interpreting, and simultaneous interpreting. So sight translation is basically you translate a document out loud into the other language. For example, if you are in the middle of a jury trial and there's a letter written in Vietnamese that was admitted into evidence, and you need to read it out loud but into English so that the jury can understand what it says. Now that's sight translation. Consecutive interpreting is mostly used for interpreting for witnesses on the stand, and note taking is key for consecutive interpreting. It's basically what you do is you listen to the question from the attorney, you take note what the question says, and then you repeat that into Vietnamese for the witness. And then when the witness answers in Vietnamese, you take note, and then you repeat that, but into English, and so on and so forth until the witness is done. Simultaneous interpreting is what we use the most in court. It's basically like dubbing a movie in real time. Whatever the attorney, the judge are saying, you repeat that with about a second or 2 seconds delay for the witness or the defendant to understand. And this is especially challenging for languages with a radically different grammatical structure than English. For example, in Vietnamese, if you say, there was a tiny, fluffy, and cute cat in the alley, I can't really start my interpretation until I hear the word cat. Because in Vietnamese, it would say a cat that's tiny, fluffy, and cute in the alley. So I know that for Vietnamese speakers, this is the most challenging portion of the Vietnamese, of the oral exam. Now, we encourage you to find examples of this mode and the rest on YouTube. Like, YouTube is your go-to resource. There's a lot of good arguments and video clips in court on YouTube that you can access for free. I encourage you to go there, get familiar, practice, and share specific topics or videos that you found to be helpful in practice with people that you study with. Jennifer?
All right. So study, practice, repeat. Second thing you'll want to do is build and maintain your legal glossaries. There might be many ways to do this, but there is a QR code on screen with a collection of legal glossaries all ready for you in lots of languages. So you can explore that resource, and you can also search the web for more glossary content, and you start building your glossary guide. You can share other things with colleagues. You can learn vocabulary by visiting the courts, but the idea is that you are continually building your toolbox, your toolkit for whatever people might say. We walk into a courtroom, we often don't know what's going to come out of the folks that are in the room. They might have a really interesting job title during the process of jury selection. There might be some really unusual sort of manufacturing involved in a civil case. You never quite know what's going to come up. So building your glossaries on a continual basis, as soon as you decide you want to be an interpreter, becomes a daily way of life. I'm sure Tyler would agree. Watching TV, watching the news, reading a book, if there's a word that pops up that we don't know in our second language, we're probably looking it up, writing it down, or asking our family how to say that. It becomes who you are. So initially, I remember building my glossaries in an old, gosh, WordPerfect document. It was so much fun to years later look at that document and realize how much I'd learned. Over the years, I started using flashcards. Prepping for the exam, I used flashcards. Building your glossaries and building the practice of having vocabulary front and center is incredibly helpful, and it's something you can start right after this webinar with the next word that comes up in your life that you don't know in both languages. Tyler?
And I agree. You know, like you're going to see that in court, they use vocabulary that most people in real life do not use. So the process of repetition of those terms will be the key to your using it without any thinking at all. And to share my personal experience, when I first started, I formed a study group with a few people who wanted to become certified interpreters. And we would taking turn reading something out loud, and the other person would be interpreting simultaneously, and another person would record everything or take note. And then at the end, we would give each other feedback. And if you don't have the luxury of having people to form a study group, use a recorder and then replay what you interpreted and just critique yourself. And like I said earlier, using YouTube, that's a treasure trove of materials right there. I would search for keywords like opening argument, closing argument, or jury selection. Just pick a trial that you're curious in. I actually used the O.J. Simpson trial. And, I didn't interpret the whole thing, of course, but, portions of it were so useful. And again, record yourself, listen again, and every time you redo the interpretation, you improve a little bit until you feel comfortable and move on to something maybe faster or more complicated. Angela?
That's great. Thank you, Tyler. So American Sign Language is one of the fastest growing interpreting languages needed in our courts. Although we currently do not have an in-state credentialing exam, we have 2 reciprocity opportunities for ASL candidates to join our master list. The first is by passing the Texas Board for the Evaluation of Interpreters Court Interpreter Certification Exam. Wow, that's a mouthful. The second is by having a Registry of Interpreter for the Deaf Specialist Certification in Legal Interpreting. That is the old credentialing program, but we do still use it if you have it, and you are able to gain reciprocity on our master list through that. If you have any more questions or would like to inquire about either of these reciprocity opportunities, please use the QR code on the screen and visit our ASL webpage. It has more information. Next slide, and Jennifer.
Thank you. So the last step in your credentialing journey is once you have passed the required exams, first of all, congratulations and welcome to a wonderful profession. You need to enroll with us, with the Judicial Council. You need to do that enrollment so that you're added to our public master list of credentialed interpreters. And I'll tell you, courts use that list to fill job vacancies or interpreting assignments, but you are also free to apply for any of the vacant positions all over California. There is a salary and benefits package at every single court that you can find on those courts' websites. But as you see here, we've got an average pay of $95,644 for full-time plus the benefits. And even if you decide not to get a job at a court, I hope you do, but even if you decide you do not take that path, you can stay on our master list as an independent contractor and work throughout the state of California. And at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see it says growing need in languages like. These are just some of the languages where we're seeing a notable increase in the need for these languages in court. Arabic, Hindi, Mixteco, Punjabi, Tagalog, so many more. And it does vary by region. Next slide, please.
I just want to add to what Jennifer just said. As of today, Sacramento County Superior Court is currently hiring both full-time and part-time interpreters in Spanish, Dari, Pashto, Arabic, and Farsi. And we've had this hiring post for quite some time, more than 30 days, according to the website. So that's a need. So I'm going to get to the next one. Now, what you can do to get started today. Now, once again, you see the 3 QR codes on the screen. You can scan those and explore our YouTube playlist with over 15 videos that will give you an overview of the profession, what the day in the life of interpreter looks like, and used for exam preparation information. And the second QR code will take you to our publications webpage, where you find our complete collection of free resources. Use the filter and get familiar with these web pages. The last code will take you to our exam webpage, where you find up-to-date exam registration information. Jennifer.
All right, so the next slide, please. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We have reviewed your submissions, and we have Angela to talk about the most asked questions. So we'll turn it to Angela.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So these were the top 3 questions that we received. Of course, we'd love to go through all of them, but we'd be here all day. But the first question is, what schools or education programs are available for me? So as a state agency, we cannot endorse any education providers, but we have compiled a list of in-state educational programs. If you'd love to see them, that QR code at the top will take you to the list. Now, the programs are usually language dependent, so we encourage that you do your own research based on your own language need. The second question that we got was, how can I be part of the workforce program? And we know that there's a lot of you out there with this question about the Workforce Pilot Program. And although we can't get into all of the details today, we'd love for you to check out our informational page through that second QR code. And that will give you information on upcoming cohorts, any prerequisites, and the deadlines for the applications. And I'll send it back to Tyler and Jennifer for that last question.
All right, so I'll start. Career growth. What does the future hold, right? So as I said before, court interpreting can be new every single day. It's something new. I got into the habit of having very little expectation when I walked into a courtroom, because I never quite know what's going to happen. So I learned to just be adaptable, be ready for it. What's great about growth is we can describe it a couple of ways, right? There is growth in learning new vocabulary. For my language, which is Spanish, I get to learn vocabulary from all over Latin America. In fact, I spoke to someone this morning from Spain who wants to be a court interpreter, thinking about what words could come up depending on where I decide to work in California, where I decide to work in the US as a court interpreter. There is nothing but growth in vocabulary. There's always growth. I even told someone this morning, she said, what can I do to increase my vocabulary? And I started listing my favorite works of literature. There is always growth in your personal development as an interpreter, and it is very satisfying. There's growth even as part of the court interpreter work itself in a courtroom. I remember starting as a court interpreter over in Riverside Court and thinking that certain case types, which are pretty minor, misdemeanors perhaps, were the do-all, end-all, be-all of the vocabulary. 9 years later, I found myself much more fascinated with how attorneys were arguing their motions and how quickly could I interpret a really complicated phrase. Or like Tyler said, How could I fall 3 or 4 seconds behind while I'm simultaneously interpreting? Can I hit the nail on the head on a really difficult word? So many things happen in the courtroom. You grow every single day and with every role that you play in the courtroom. It's lovely to learn the intricacies of the way that the court system works, most of all, I think. But other doors can also open for a credentialed interpreter. I know that they opened for me. Having a California court credential allowed me to get a foot in the door to become a certified translator, so working in written translation. Translation agencies were interested in my credential. They said, "Can you translate?" Well, here's my credential. What do you think? And of course, they tested me, but then I got to be a translator. So it's super interesting to work in that very different field, especially if you like the written word. I was able to participate in the language access programs, like I said, and even learning about how the legal systems work around the world. You could become, like I said, a translator, or maybe you might even get interested in conference interpreting somewhere in the future. So there is career growth, whether it's within the court, within you, your professional growth, your knowledge, your understanding. There is growth in so many ways. And in my current role, I get to lead and support the dedicated staff of the court interpreters here at San Bernardino Court. And it is so satisfying to be able to make a positive difference for the work that they're doing every day and help my court achieve its language access goals. And I can't tell you how much I love having conversations with the interpreters about, gosh, what word came up for you recently? What challenges did you have that maybe I've had in my past and I can share how I resolved it? Fascinating growth. And it's not just about this upward movement of growth. It's really about expanding your horizons and seeing so much more out there with how we can assist in the language access world. And it can start with becoming credentialed in California. And I'll turn it to Tyler for a little more of the future.
So I'm going to touch on a little bit on the relationship between technological advancements and our profession. And the first one I would like to talk about is video remote interpreting, or VRI. Now, during the pandemic, because of the shutdown and the isolation, people could not go to court. So to ensure that the legal proceedings still take place, we had to use interpreting over video. Now, just like with seeing a doctor, being in person is always the best, because the doctor can, like visually evaluate you. And there's a lot of body language and body cues that would be missing if you appear on the screen, such as I am right now. However, routine procedures are not complicated and can be done remotely. Interpreting is very similar in that regard. Video remote interpreting can be useful in some cases, especially for people with limited mobility, or for really rare languages where the defendant is in one location and the interpreter is hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. But VRI is probably not suitable in cases that involve lengthy arguments and evidence presentations. Another one that has been a hot topic in the news lately is artificial intelligence, right? Now, because it's so new, no one knows where it's going to take us. And, of course, my opinion is based on what I read, and it's purely speculative. AI currently cannot accurately interpret at the level that humans can. And we all know that languages are alive and constantly evolving. AI may help interpreter with enhanced interpretation, but probably cannot fully replace humans, at least not in the foreseeable future. I think that court interpretation should be safe for now. One reason is the legal liability. When I show up in court, I take the oath to interpret faithfully. And if I make a mistake, I can tell the court. Or if I don't, then I'm going to be liable for the mistake that I made. Now, with a machine, with an AI machine doing interpretation, it's so much harder to hold someone accountable. Another one is the real-time assistance that a court interpreter can provide. In a trial, you don't just show up, interpret, and leave. You show up, you interpret, and sometimes the attorney, the defense attorney, or the DA would like to have a quick word with the defendants or the witness, and you will be pulled aside for a quick conversation and immediately go back in court, get on the record, and interpret again. Now, technology may sound good on paper, but the other day I just spent about an hour trying to get someone get their Zoom ready so that we could start the process, and that was just as simple as get on Zoom to attend a court proceeding. So I don't know. Jennifer, Jennifer, you have anything to add?
Sure.
Yeah, I just think you're right, Tyler. Like the languages are ever evolving, and just the interpersonalness of having a person there with you as opposed to a machine. I don't think AI will be able to cover that.
Well, I would just add too the sorts of things that we're interpreting, in my past experience as a hospital interpreter on the witness stand, people may say them very quietly. They may say them only part way, and they don't want to have to repeat them. The interpreter does their best to hear it correctly the first time, but I can't imagine having to tell someone, can you please say that again and into the mic? And it was something that they didn't want to have to say in the first place. So yeah, I agree, Tyler. Well said.
And just to touch upon some basic facts and questions that we've gotten before. All aspiring candidates must be 18 years or older to sign up for any of the exams. Once you've passed the exams and enrolled on our master list, you also need to meet the minimum requirements to work in the US to be hired for one of our courts. And once you are applying for any of those court positions, they also have requirements themselves, things such as background checks and things of that nature. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to your local court or check out our website as well. We do have information. And just to share a little bit about my personal experience with the testing and practicing, I know we've kind of drilled it in there that practicing is the best teacher. But if you aren't lucky enough to find a small group to practice with, which is kind of the best, right? What Tyler was saying, to be able to get that feedback from your colleagues, you can also, watch your favorite legal dramas and, interpret into a recording device, your phone, and listen back. That's actually one of the best ways I found to practice by myself. And it really, really does help. And you listen to it back and put yourself in the position of the other person. Does it make sense? Can you follow it? YouTube University is like Tyler said, it's a treasure trove of great information and things that you can use. So the resources are out there. You just have to be very driven and self-sufficient to go out and find them. Jennifer?
I would just add that one of the things that I did was I listened to audios every single night, even as a medical interpreter. I had my headphones on, and nobody could bother me for a couple of hours a night. This is not a process where you can be passive. We're not talking about just reading your vocabulary. You have to be practicing. So well said, Angela. All right. So we need you in this rewarding career. I told you at the beginning that my takeaway was that you would be inspired. And we've now shared the how and we've shared the why. You see lots of those things here. It is a wonderful career where I promise you will never stop learning and growing. You get to use your skills to serve others and be part of justice. What a unique combination, right? And yes, it's going to take work. Yes, it's going to take work, but it is so worth it. And it is within your reach. It is all about whether you decide that you're going to do this. Tyler?
So in the beginning, I said that I would like you to take away one concrete first step that you can take to get your career started. Now, that first step would be to shadow a working court interpreter. How would you do that? Well, call your court interpreter's office at your county superior court. If you don't know the number, show up in the courthouse and ask any court staff with a badge or any sheriff deputy that would be more than happy to tell you where the court interpreter's office is. Go up to the office and tell them that, hey, I would like to become a court interpreter is any way I can shadow someone. And trust me, they will do everything they can to help set you up with a working interpreter. That's what happened to me. I was in Orange County in Southern California. I called the Orange County Superior Court interpreter's office, and they were so kind to set me up with this wonderful interpreter. I followed him just for half a day during the morning, and he would show me around and he would explain to me what just happened and what it's like to be an interpreter on a day-to-day, what kind of work I'm expecting, even pay, compensation, retirement, things like that. I was on the fence before that day. After that day, I made 100% commitment to becoming a court interpreter and started to work and study. Now, if you shadow interpreter and you decide that that's something you want to do for the next 20 years, now let's get serious and start studying with all the resources that we provided to you today. So initially, I was an over-the-phone interpreter just so I could get used to interpreting, because frankly, before that, I did not even know that the profession existed. So I worked as an OPI interpreter for a while to get to learn the profession. And when I felt ready, I took the exam. So I encourage you to look into that. Angela?
Thank you, Tyler. So just on some concluding words, having a language skill in such a diverse state is a gift. And becoming a court interpreter could be your contribution to making a real difference. You would be the bridge between people and justice, helping ensure everyone's voice is heard clearly and fairly, ensuring that access to justice. This is not just a job. It's a powerful career with purpose and fulfillment. Superior courts throughout the state are actively hiring credentialed interpreters in numerous languages, providing job stability, great salaries, and generous benefits. Please be sure to visit our website for more information.